Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I am joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
How is this year almost over, Damon? I don't understand.
We're recording this on December 1st. It just doesn't seem possible. Almost 2 years of this show running now. Also joining us, as always, is Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Beyond. I lost all concept of time several years back, so at this point, it doesn't matter.
Yep. Just know we're all still hurtling ever forward through space into the future. Speaking of the future, next week, it's time for the Game Awards again. They are airing Thursday, December 9th, 5 p.m. Pacific, and IGN will be streaming our own pre- and post-show coverage of that, so plan to tune into all of the big announcements here with us at IGN, and we'll be breaking down everything afterwards. The Game Awards have really become known as a place where lots of big games are announced. Let's talk about some predictions for next week. To recap last year's award show, this is I've picked up some of the big announcements. This is not even everything. This is just the bigger stuff. There was Sephiroth, the character announced for Smash. Perfect Dark, a new Perfect Dark was revealed with a little bit of a teaser trailer. That's a dream come true for me. Perfect Dark's one of my favorite games of all time. Back for Blood was revealed. We got a sneak peek at Dragon Age 4, and there was a teaser trailer for whatever the next Mass Effect is. Remember there, Arc 2 with Vin Diesel was revealed. Right. Evil Dead, the game, was announced, and I think has been dark ever since. Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection was announced and came out early this year. We got a new look at Returnal, so we do get some big, PlayStation exclusives in there as well. So it's entirely possible we could get a lot of big announcements next week and maybe some new looks at games that have already been announced. Ryan, let's start with you. What's sort of like one of your biggest predictions for next week?
I'm going to start third party before I talk Xbox specifically. And given, again, you look at the history of the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley has definitely established relationships with a lot of big developers. And one developer that he has featured on the Game Awards before is Rocksteady. I mean, the one or more of the Arkham games, I think it might have been City, maybe and or Night, were revealed at the Game Awards. And here we are now. DC fandom has come and gone. We got a little bit on Rocksteady's Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, but we still haven't seen proper gameplay. Now, maybe it's too soon. Fandom was just, a month and a half ago, something like that. But I think there's a good chance that this could be the place where we might get a first proper look at gameplay, a gameplay trailer from the Suicide Squad. I certainly hope so. I'm trying to speak this one into existence because I'm really eager to see what a next generation Rocksteady game looks like. The Arkham games were always beautiful on the 360 generation. And into the Xbox One, PS4 generation. And I just can't wait to see what they've really cooked up. Like, how does this game really play?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. Fandom isn't that far in our rearview mirror right now. But we've known about this game for well over a year. And like you said, we haven't seen any gameplay of it yet. I would love to see this game in action. Jonathon, I know you're a fan of everything superheroes, both in movies and games. Is this something you're looking forward to as well?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I'm hoping we see something from WB Slate. Tentatively right now for 2022, they have Gotham Knights, Suicide Squad, and Hogwarts Legacy.
Right. All
set tentatively for next year. I would certainly not be surprised if at least one of those gets pushed a year out. But, that's 3 big games from WB. And as Ryan said, with Jeff's history, especially with Rocksteady, I feel like at least one of those has to make an appearance.
Okay, Ryan, now Xbox and Bethesda have Starfield coming next year. They've planted their flag on some planet, 11/11/22 as a release date. We've sort of gotten a steady stream of information about Starfield since it was really, fully revealed back at E3. What about something else from Xbox or Bethesda? Maybe something like Indiana Jones?
Exactly my thinking as well. It does seem like the right time to get a proper, not even necessarily gameplay trailer on that one, but the teaser announcement we got was the teaseriest of teasers. It was a map on a table. So I think it could very well be time for a proper cinematic unveiling of Indiana Jones. Now, is this game going to be exclusive to Xbox? I know this conversation is old and tired at this point, but I think this is one of the final games it actually genuinely applies to. because this deal with Lucas may have been signed prior to the acquisition of Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda. So that doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, what does matter is seeing this game. Todd Howard, who you mentioned, Starfield, he's the longtime game director at Bethesda Game Studios. He is executive producing this game, and Machine Games, they of the Wolfenstein reboots that are so good, is developing it. So, I mean, now that's a studio that has been working in id Tech, Doom's engine. It's also a studio that's really only ever worked in first-person perspective, even going back, because the core of Machine Games was founded by a large group of developers who were at Starbreeze back in the day that did The Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay, one of, if not the single greatest movie licensed game of all time. And Indiana Jones, probably not going to be a first-person game. I would be surprised if it is. I mean, I'd kind of like to see that, but odds are it'll be third-person. So I just can't wait to see more of, in any form, of Indiana Jones and Starbreeze, or Machine Games, rather, and executive produced by Todd Howard. So, but it does seem like the timing could work out. I mean, we don't know how far out that game is, but it's only been so barely announced that the Game Awards could be a good high-profile venue for us to see more of it.
Yeah, I would like to see that one as well. Of course, there is Indiana Jones 5, which is in production right now. I don't think the game is based on the movie, but sometimes they might just want to sort of align up those marketing paths, sort of maximize awareness of everything Indiana Jones that's going on. Speaking of first gameplay, like we were for Suicide Squad, Ryan, Hellblade 2 was revealed at the Game Awards 2 years ago in 2019. And correct me if I'm wrong, we still haven't really seen gameplay of that, have we?
Correct. We've gotten a couple of small sort of studio behind-the-scenes-y updates from Ninja Theory, the developer, at Microsoft events since then, but we have not seen the Hellblade sequel since its cinematic unveiling, alongside the Series X itself 2 years ago at the Game Awards. It is officially the first Series X game ever announced. So, or at least first Series X exclusive game ever announced. So, yeah, it's Unreal Engine 5. We know that much. It's probably still a bit out, but I agree with you, Damon. I think this, again, like Indiana Jones, although not just could be a good venue to see it again, but unlike Indy, we know Hellblade's certainly probably a little further along. We did get a cinematic trailer that we haven't even gotten for Indy. So, yeah, I'm hoping for first gameplay of Hellblade 2 at this next Game Awards here coming up next week. And because that one, I mean, you talk about Microsoft and trying to rebuild their first party portfolio. They've been doing a great job of that. Just this year alone, we've seen Flight Simulator for Series X. No Xbox One version is a next-gen game. We've seen Psychonauts 2, which is mentioned in a lot of Game of the Year breaths for people. We've seen Forza Horizon 5, which is no doubt also going to be in the running for a lot of Game of the Year awards. And Halo Infinite is coming up in a week's time. So it's been a good year. Microsoft's starting to rebuild that first-party portfolio, rebuild the reputation for quality on the first-party side. But yet, Hellblade has kind of always been the game that is sort of the most, and I don't say this like in any sort of real comparative way, but it's kind of that Sony style, that third-person narrative-driven action-adventure game that's can potentially match up to those great games that Sony puts out. So, yeah, this would be a great venue to see more of it, and I really hope we do.
Okay, Jonathan, give us some PlayStation predictions. I mentioned at the top of the show that we got a new look at Returnal at the Game Awards last year, and recently Housemarque was teasing some new content for Returnal. Is that right?
They're teasing something, so I hope it's Game Awards related. Yeah, Housemarque over, I believe, the Thanksgiving weekend here in the US, they tweeted out a picture of what looks like a rock formation or something. It doesn't look like anything that we've really seen in the game so far. And just the word Atropos with a question mark, which is the world that Selena's on. So we don't really know what that is. I believe there was a follow-up tweet from someone at Housemarque that said, film something very exciting today. Looking forward to, sharing more soon. So that indicates to me there's some sort of trailer or thing in the works. And certainly, with the way that game is built to be so modular, I wouldn't be shocked if they found a way to put in some fun DLC. Housemarque has been pretty quiet since Returnal came out. They've been doing post-launch updates for that game, especially the big 2.0 update that added the save state and everything, which I know they were working very hard to make happen. So they've obviously been continuing to focus on Returnal, but it would be very cool to see an expansion. So that's one of my predictions now, mostly because it's one of the few things we know of that's been ominously teased by a PlayStation studio.
Now, Sony's first really big game of 2022 will be Horizon Forbidden West. We have actually, seen quite a lot of that game already. Do you think it's likely we'll get a new look at it at the Game Awards next week?
So that's the one that I'm leaning toward most likely being there, largely because it is the one that's coming up the soonest in terms of PlayStation's first party slate. It's very possible it's not there, but my thought is especially PlayStation likes to sort of do teasers and then deeper dives with their first party games. So it's very possible we might get a short cinematic teaser of Horizon. We've seen a lot of, I think, gameplay so far, but not as much of a sense of the story of the sequel. We've gotten a few character interactions in the state of play footage that premiered earlier this year, but we don't have sort of a full scope of it via a trailer. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see something along those lines to give you a little bit of a better idea of what the characters are that you're going to be interacting with this time, because Guerrilla has put a lot of emphasis, including in a recent PlayStation blog, of how much more lived in they want the world to feel this time around. Obviously with the first game, the robot dinosaurs were the coolest part of that open world to go see and explore with, and the human settlements were sort of secondary to that. It seems like they're putting a lot more emphasis into making those human settlements and those civilizations be worth engaging with it in a lot more detail. So it'd be cool to see something along those lines, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's a teaser for a state of play in January or something like that.
Okay, Jonathan, any other predictions, even if they're not necessarily PlayStation exclusive?
Yeah, just on the third party side, I think to bring it back to Lucasfilm again, and also, as Ryan said, to speak it into existence, I really am hoping we see something of a Jedi Fallen Order sequel. We know that game sold very well. It was obviously critically well received. It's sort of, with EA losing the exclusivity license of Star Wars, it seems to be the one thing that people are still expecting to come from the EA and Star Wars relationship. And so I would almost, certainly assume there is some sort of sequel in the works, but it's been pretty quiet for a while now. That came out at the end of 2019. And so I would love to see, even if it's just a sort of cinematic teaser, even if it is just someone from Respawn in the audience telling us the name, like happened with the original Jedi Fallen Order. I feel like now is a decent time, especially because earlier this year, Lucasfilm did say, when we were seeing the Indiana Jones teaser, they were like, we have more on the way later this year, to announce. And granted, we did get the KOTOR remake announcement, but that still leaves room for more. This is the final event of the year. And so it wouldn't be shocking to see such an anticipated sequel get a little bit of a nod here.
Yeah, I very much look forward to the follow-up to Fallen Order. I love that game. Yeah. Let's see, any other odds and ends that could likely appear next week? What about Elden Ring? That's a game that's coming early next year, and Keeley had the big gameplay reveal of that earlier this year. Ryan, do you expect to see Elden Ring next week?
Honestly, no, only because there's been so much shown of it. It had the air of mystery around it for so long, but they've clearly started firing the marketing cannons, and we've seen a good bit on it now. I mean, we've played it, we've previewed it. There's been a closed test for it. So I'm sure Elden Ring fans, the many of them that are looking forward to the game, would be happy to see more. But my instinct says probably not at the Game Awards.
Well, Nintendo usually has something for the Game Awards. Breath of the Wild 2 is supposedly coming next year. I've seen a lot of, not rumors really, but predictions of people that think Nintendo will show off more Breath of the Wild 2 next week. Of course, it had a big, sort of a big gameplay reveal at E3 earlier this year. Jonathan, how are you feeling about Breath of the Wild 2 making an appearance next week?
I mean, it's definitely a good guess, I think. Breath of the Wild gameplay was first shown at the Game Awards. They, I believe, surprise dropped the first DLC for Breath of the Wild the night of the Game Awards a few years back. Nintendo has been there every year in some big way. Super Smash Brothers has kind of been the focus for the last few years, but Nintendo doesn't shy away from bringing big games to the Game Awards. So Breath of the Wild 2 is certainly the one to show. I think it really just depends on how far along that game actually is and how on target for 2022 and where in 2022 it actually is. I think that's really the big question mark. But I would hazard a guess that even if it's not Breath of the Wild 2, we will see something from Nintendo.
You know, the main Mario team, they've been doing something since it's now been 4 years since Odyssey came out, which I so happily gave a 10 out of 10 to. That was my game of the year that year. So, you know, it could be more. It could be Mario time, mainline Mario time, which would make me. There's not much more that could make me happier than that.
There's a lot of Nintendo options. Obviously, there's Metroid Prime 4. You know, the continually rumored Metroid Prime trilogy remaster for Switch. Miyamoto mentioned Pikmin 4 years ago, and that is a hope that myself included, many Nintendo fans continue to hold on exists. So yeah, I think without a doubt we'll see something from Nintendo, but there's a lot of possibilities for what it could be.
This is on a much smaller scale than Mario or Zelda or Metroid, but there was the Advance Wars 1 and 2 remake that was announced, supposed to be out this year, but then got delayed into early next year. So maybe Nintendo would want to remind everyone that that's still on the horizon. My personal wish list, Perfect Dark, revealed at the Game Awards last year. Quiet ever since then. E3 came and went without any mention of Perfect Dark. I would love to see it again, but when we were talking yesterday, Ryan, you didn't seem to think that was very likely. Is that right?
It just seems like it's still pretty early. I mean, we got that sort of weird end of the day tweet that announced, oh, by the way, Crystal Dynamics, the makers of Tomb Raider and the Avengers, are helping us finish this game and make the co-developing with us. And we haven't heard from, as you noted, we haven't heard from it since. So it just kind of feels like they're knee deep in it right now, which that's a big game. There's a lot to do. And I'm with you. I'd love to see more of it, but it's not one that if I were a betting man, if we were going to Vegas, I would not put my money on that one for next week.
Okay, well, those are some predictions for the Game Awards next week. Again, those are airing Thursday, December 9th at 5 p.m. Pacific, and we'll have all of your pre- and post-show coverage right here on IGN. Let's talk about some news from last week, holiday weekend here in the U.S., Thanksgiving and Black Friday weekend. And turns out the best-selling console over Black Friday weekend was not the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X, but the Xbox Series S, the little next-gen console that could. Ryan, were we surprised by this, or just the fact that it's less expensive, it's an easy entryway into next gen, and Game Pass is such an attractive deal? Does all this come together to make it obvious that was the best-selling console?
Well, respectfully, Damon, no. I think it's more just we should just change it from best-selling to most available console. I mean, everybody's trying to pump out as many next-gen consoles as they can. Microsoft with their 2 and Sony. I mean, Sony has 2 as well. We never talk about the discless PS5 anymore, but it's there. And it's clearly Microsoft was just able to get more Series S's out the door than they were Series X's or Sony was either version of the PS5. It's not to take away from the Series S because as you said, it's really a valuable console in the sense that it's the perfect Game Pass machine. No disk drive. You subscribe to Game Pass, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your primary console. Maybe you already got a PS5, but this is you throw this in your living room as well, and suddenly for $300 and a $10 a month or $15 if you want to step up to Ultimate and play on PC as well, you've got all of Game Pass available to you. So, I mean, I think it's just nice to see. I mean, we've been talking, you said, Damon, the show's been going for 2 years. Well, we've spent the last one of those, we spent half of that time talking about and just lamenting at how difficult it is to find these consoles. And I think it's just nice to celebrate that there were enough Series S's out there that some people got their hands on them and are having fun with them now.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is the availability is a big factor. I checked just before this taping, and there's 4 Xbox Series S's available at my local GameStop, available for pickup right now. So, good news. At least it's good news for Xbox. Continues. I guess it continues the streak of good news that Xbox has been enjoying this generation. Jonathon, do we have any sort of idea what the breakdown is between these PlayStation 5 disc and discless models? How many of each, or percentage of sales?
I'm still not sure the discless version even exists.
I don't think so either.
But, some say it does out there. I think Brian Altano actually might own one. But yeah, we really don't see those. I know that at launch, like anecdotally, it sounded like those were extremely difficult to come by, sort of the inverse of Xbox, where the Series S is also anecdotally the only one I've heard most people can walk into a store and find.
Mm-hmm.
No one could find the discless version of the PS5. So as far as I know, we don't have any breakdown of official numbers. I would assume it's a much smaller slice of the overall pie than the Series S is for X and S. But it's out there, and I hope those who have found it like it, because I do think it is the better form factor.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if, given the just ongoing chip shortage, if Sony has very quietly taken whatever allocation they had planned for between the two PS5s and just cut the discless version down to almost zero. And because why they might as well, they can sell every single one they make. They might as well make a little bit more money on the disc version, right? So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's a very good reason why none of us have heard about the discless version in about a year.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, before we go, we've got the results of last episode's poll. We asked you, which unannounced Xbox exclusive are you most looking forward to? Options were id Software's next project, codename Pentiment from Obsidian, In Exile's next project, Wasteland developer, and codename Midnight from Compulsion Games, and perhaps unsurprisingly, id Software's next project won with 46% of the votes. So, Ryan, do we know anything about what id Software's next project is?
We don't, but I'm hoping it's that Quake reboot. If they give Quake the same kind of reimagining that they gave Doom, that could be a very special situation. So yeah, I will be very eager to see what that project is.
We have a poll for you to vote on for next week. We want to know, which next-gen console did you manage to buy this Black Friday? Was it Series S? Did you manage to find the discless PS5? I'm not sure if I would believe you. Or maybe you couldn't find any console. Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we'll share the results with you next week. And that will do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. Thank you to Alan, working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. We'll be back next Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, with more PS5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll see you then.